Welcome to the My Narrative podcast. I'm your host, Yafa Ares. The following is a conversation with JaBig. JaBig is a house music DJ from Montreal, Canada. Best known for his deep and dope DJ sets on YouTube, which have been streamed for over 7 billion hours. He's also the only person in history to cycle across Canada, coast to coast to coast, in winter, on a fixed gear bicycle, all to break the Guinness World Records of the longest journey by bicycle in a single country. I watched your video, the short video, on probably one of the most challenge you've faced, cycling all around Canada. What was going on there? Tell me.
Well, I love music, and the beauty of it is that, I'm a DJ at night. So when you're a DJ, you have a lot of time during the week. And one day I accidentally walked by a bike shop and I decided to buy myself a bike. And I started riding, in Montreal, and I realized, it feels good. It's good for my sanity. It's actually exercise because I'm too lazy to do any other sorts of exercise. And then I started riding and riding and riding. And then before I knew it, I saw that I had, circled the equivalent of, from Montreal to Vancouver, which is one end of Canada to the next. And I thought to myself, perhaps I should just cycle across Canada. And then 3 months later, I went ahead and did it. And it became like a 15-month adventure that was, mostly in winter because, I don't know, why not make something complicated even more complicated? And 15 months later, I rode across the country, and then, I came back to Montreal and I got restless. And then in 2019, I decided, okay, this time let me ride around the world. And I actually started my ride around the world. And, from August 2019 until March 2020, when the pandemic, the global health crisis happened. And the Canadian government recalled me, told me, I was in the United Kingdom, and they said, okay, you need to come back home because, the borders are closing in Europe, and we're going to shut down our borders, so you better come home quickly. I figured, let me just go home. This thing is going to pass. Well, as of today, it still hasn't passed. We still can't travel abroad. So last summer I decided, okay, I'm back in Canada, and I was meant to be gone for 5 years on this bicycle journey. I said, you know what? I'm dying, like sitting, at home, just like that, even though I know that it's a privilege to be sitting at home, and I just rode across Canada again. And it turns out that, cycling is my, I cycle for escapism and, adventure. And I also get to raise, funds for charitable, organization while doing it. So why not? And, and right now as a DJ, I'm not working because, partying is on lockdown until Lord knows when. So the only thing I have going on is to be in the great outdoors riding my bike. And that's actually why I ended up leaving Montreal and moving to Vancouver, because the province where Vancouver is located in is very mountainous, and there's also the ocean. And I think that it's a better place to be in lockdown than in Montreal with our very nasty winters.
Wow, it's insane. But just to go back to this nearly 1 year journey cycling coast to coast in Canada, am I correct? I've read online that you tried to beat the Guinness World Records. Have you managed to do so?
Yeah, so actually the journey was 15 months, so it was a year and whatever 15 months is. I'm not good at math. And it was actually from coast to coast to coast, because most people don't know this, but we actually have 3 coast oceans in Canada, which is the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic. So I went all the way north to the Arctic. And yes, one of the reasons I rode was to try and break the Guinness World Record for the longest journey by bicycle in a single country. So basically what the record is you pick a country and then you ride in it without turning around or without redoing the same segment, and you just keep going. And yes, I did break the Guinness World Record and I set a new one. But while I was, gathering my evidence to present to Guinness World Records, because they don't just trust you, they have to validate it. Somebody in Australia finished his and rode longer than me and broke his. So by the time he submitted his, he had done more than I had done. So I did break it, but I really never got it signed and on paper, but I did break it. But, I don't just give up easily. I'm already cooking up of something else to do, like to break that record again, but not in Canada and definitely not in winter, because I learned my lesson. There's a reason why people don't ride in winter. It's just terrible.
Oh boy. But hey, I think your achievement, regardless, you've been bit by the red tape, you still managed to accomplish your goal, and I think that's remarkable. So I think we can just say it. So when you started your journey, and before we dive, and I'm deeply curious to hear about the stories and the cold and the challenges and all of that. But first, what did your friends and family say when you told them about this grandiose plan of breaking the Guinness World Record?
Well, actually told people I'm going to cycle across Canada in January. I'm leaving in January to ride across Canada. But it was around Christmas, and people thought I was maybe being nostalgic or being silly, or because I'm always making jokes. So they didn't think much of it. It's until they realized that I was getting a new bicycle and I was actually getting and I started doing some press stuff to put on the internet and do announcements and, get some media coverage for it, that everyone around me said, "Are you serious? Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? Are you suicidal?" And, people told me, "You even hate the cold," which is true, because most of the time in winter, I run away to somewhere warmer, or if I'm not traveling, I stay at home and I don't move. And you're riding, first of all, nobody rides a bike in winter because nobody does. And you're also doing on a fixed gear bike, which is a bicycle with one gear and the pedals keeps on rotating. And people tell me, well, what craziness is that? But what they don't realize is that, I was in a stage in my life where I just wanted to get away from everything. My DJ career was doing well, but I'd gotten to that stage where I was like, okay, I've played in some of the best clubs I want to play at. And is that it? So, and I realized that, I needed a break from everything to rethink my life, because I was 37 at the time, and the 40s, my 40s were coming, like they were not even knocking they were not even knocking. They were just like, I was right there, So I figured, let me go. It was like escapism, Some people, when they want to think, they walk around the block. I decided to ride across the country, and everyone, I really don't think. It's only people who don't know me and people who cyclists who said, "Oh, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty bold." But everyone around me was petrified. They said, what are you doing? Why do you just want to end your life?" And I told them, well, there are better and more efficient way to take one's life. I'm not playing around with suicide because it's a serious issue. But I told them, really, I'm just going on an adventure. And you know what? For me, for once, I want to do something and there, because I've lived my life too cautiously and I've always played by the rules and I've done things, stayed in my lane. And I was also sick and tired of people telling me that I couldn't do anything. So it was a way of rebelling and a way of escaping, escapism, and a way of, it was so many things all at once. And to the outside world, so a person riding a bike, but to people who are really, who really can read between the lines, they said, okay, what would take? Why is this man who doesn't like the cold, who's not adventurous at all, why would you rather get on a bicycle and ride across the country in winter than stay where he is? What that's all about? And that was the right question, and I didn't have the answer. All I know is I just know I had I wasn't settled, and I was feeling, I don't know, I just felt like uneasy in myself. So I'm like, okay, I just need to get away from everything, from music, from everything, and just my thoughts and that's it. And so, yeah, so everyone around me thought I was crazy. And it's only when they saw that, the first days were rough because I was getting used to it. It's only when they saw me getting to the first course that they said, hang on a minute, this guy's crazy. The only people the one thing people knew were that everyone who knows me, they say, okay, the kind of person he is. I think the one thing that worried them is that I was going to get it done no matter what, and I was going to die before quitting, even if things went wrong, because they know how stubborn I am. And that's what worried them. They saw that I didn't have experience, and yet I was going on to something silly, and they knew that I had too much, like, a stubbornness and pride, to be honest, to come back. And, I come from an African background, and, when you start something, you better finish it. Otherwise, you should have never opened your mouth to begin with.
That's really, really cool. And you said so many interesting things about having this feeling of, you felt like, okay, you've reached the sort of summit of your career in DJing. You had it all, and in some ways, ironically, you felt almost maybe empty, and you wanted to challenge yourself and maybe do something crazy and adventurous. But it looks like, despite the adversities and challenges, you definitely learn a lot from this journey. And so, how did it work? Did you have any sponsors to support you on that journey? You've mentioned briefly earlier you've raised money for charity. So tell me about it, and maybe most importantly, how did you manage to survive? Yes, indeed. And we're all glad you're well and alive, but tell us.
So the first ride wasn't about charity. It was just for me escaping, and there's even one Canadian, the biggest outdoor goods retailer. They actually did a film about it called Escape, because somebody out there saw, okay, asked the same question I said, like, why would this person who's risk averse and who has a comfortable life as a DJ, sort of like put his house for rent and put everything in storage, sell his car, sell some of his stuff to just go right across Canada, and without even any funding. Because I tried to get some sponsors, but people were like, most sponsors were, that's crazy, it's never been done before, that's silly, it's stupid, or most of them, we don't want to be associated with that because it's going to go wrong, and we don't want, the bad press. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to go, and then that's it. But the one thing I didn't count on was that I have a very loyal fan base and so-called, like, friends. So I just said online, hey, I'm going to stop for working for 15 months. Until I'm going to start across Canada. I'm not going to be working. I can't get sponsors. So most of you have listened to hundreds and hundreds of hours of my music. If you feel that you want to give back towards my trip, please feel free. Here's a GoFundMe link. And oh my goodness, people donated. So I was able to fund my trip. And then when I was halfway through the ride, my bike got stolen with everything, with my laptop, with everything. And this time I told myself, okay, that's it. I really tried my very best, but I've just lost everything, and I don't have the funds to do it. I'm going to have to go back to Montreal, get back into DJing around the world, and then, that's it. And then one of my fans decided to put up a GoFundMe saying, this man, we love his music, and his stuff got stolen, and I think we owe to him to let him finish his ride. Now, people donated even some more, and then this time, because I was obviously riding my bike, and for instance, the company that, I had bought everything by myself, but the companies who sold the equipment I was using, they chipped in and they would send me, like, for instance, a free bicycle and this and that, to replace everything I had. So within 2 weeks, I was back on the road with actually more support and more love, because now it's funny, even the person that gave $2 wants to give money, now you become emotionally invested. And I got more support and people, because also the city where my bag got stolen, they got a little bit embarrassed. And so they donated to the cause, because they were, the news spread around the world, literally, that my bag had been stolen. And people got more interest even the media got interested. They're like, but who is this guy anyway? Who's a bike gets stolen every day all around the world, but this bike got stolen and it was a big deal. Who's this person? So the ride got a little bit more interest and people got more invested, and now people would help me out. And, sometimes I would get random people telling me, hey, I admire what you're doing. Do you mind if I pay for your hotel room? Or do you mind if I send you money for lunch? And, it became like, it became a movement, and people, banded, supported me. And the whole irony of it was, I was actually I felt that nobody supported my career because I was always giving so much music, and my YouTube channel had like millions and millions of views, but because of the nature of DJ mixes on YouTube, it's only the record labels and YouTube that make money. The DJ, the person who puts everything together, I get nothing. I mean, I do get it's a brand building tool and a platform, so I do get DJ bookings, but given the amount of views I've given to all the parties, I didn't even get 1 cent. And for me, it was a little bit unfair. And so, and I try to get, fans to donate to my patrons. If you use the Patreon account, then I'm going to make more mixes. Nobody was interested. So I was like, you know what? I do all this in return of nothing. So let me just maybe quit DJing and just move on to something else. But it turns out that people, they gathered and they made me make sure that I continue. And I found that my audience and I, we became like closer, because now people were more, immersed into what I was doing, and, they started following and sharing with their friends. And I mean, somebody who lives in Norway would remember of a distant cousin that they had somewhere across Canada, and they would message them. And then I would get a message from, hey, you don't know who I am. You also don't know who my cousin is, but he's apparently loves your music and apparently going to be passing by our way. We'd love to host you, or we'd love to help you out in the ways we can, and this and that. And it just went from, and then when you go there, when I would get there, the person would say, yeah, I have a friend, we have a family friend who they live 100 kilometers your way. Let's message them and see. And then it just kept, and then before I knew it, I rode across the country. And then I got to the stage where there was one part in the Arctic, which is just too long and it's so inhabited, that I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to finish my ride over here. It was literally, out of 15 months, it was just 5 days of cycling that I needed to do. But the space was so big that I needed to camp, and I don't know how to camp. And I needed because the average temperature was minus 30 degrees Celsius. So I couldn't camp because, I didn't come across some people who were camping in that, but that's a whole different story, because whenever you're doing something crazy, there's always someone out there who show you, who's out there to show you it can even get crazier. But I said, you know what, I'm going to stop here. But I think the internet and my fan base were like, no, we refuse. He's so close. And then one family I stayed with, the wife got worried, said, I don't want him out there by himself. So she sent her husband with a caravan to come and ride with me. And she made food for 5 days. And, oh man, it's the best food I ate the whole trip, because she made food for 5 days, but I never ate the same meal once. Because I'd stayed with them for a bit, because when I'm, like maybe 2 months prior when I had stayed with them, they saw that, they say, oh, this guy is from Montreal. He's like a very picky eater. He's like, you can see his French influence, and he eats very well. He like, he likes his Nutella and the tartine le matin, in the morning. And he's like, so she had noted, and she sent me, like, I was having breakfast that even in my own house in Montreal, I don't make, because it's just too fussy. And her husband, for him, it was a drive, because he's never been that far north. So he would just, when I was riding my bike, he would just sit out there and he would, walk his dog, and he would paint, he would take photos. And to this day, he's still, he was the one thanking me for the opportunity. And I'm like, excuse me, you were the one making sure that I don't freeze to death. But it turns out it was, and then the wife also thanked me, said, I could have the whole house for myself for 2 weeks. Thank you for taking him away, because I needed a break. So it turns out, it benefited everybody. So yes, it was a tough trip, but really, in a moment of our life when I was a little bit frustrated with people, when I said I'm just all alone and I can't count on anybody, the whole world, random strangers, Canada, stood up and had my back. And it was, that lesson alone was worth all the suffering and the, I mean, I'm never alone. And I realized one thing is it was the first time in my life I had to depend on somebody because usually I'm self-sufficient. Even as a DJ, I do my own bookings, I do my own marketing. I don't need anybody. I'm very, from my young age, I've been independent. But when I was running across Canada, I literally needed people. I needed people to make sure that I was safe. I needed people to sometimes give me a ride when my bike would break down to take it to the mechanic. And on this trip, I learned that this business of not wanting help and being too independent is actually a sign of trauma because it means that somewhere in my past, there was loss of confidence or somebody, I don't know. And so it's something I need to heal from. And also there's a little bit of arrogance because I don't want to be vulnerable and ask for help. And I'm robbing myself from many opportunities. And then I asked myself, maybe this frustration I had with people was because I never voiced my demand, not my demand, but my needs and asked for what I wanted. So this trip, if I picked something from it, is to be, I got to say I have problems or I have issues and ask for help and not be embarrassed about it because we need help. And it's just revolution, whatever the word is. It changed my life in a big way to the extent where, now I literally realize that I actually have a big bank. I'm probably I like to kid around that I'm the wealthiest person on earth, but I don't have money. I have it in material goods because it turns out that my music touched so many people that, yes, what I didn't understand is that I wanted payment in money, but there's also other ways of payments. For instance, I've had like these people who said, okay, you know what? A quick example. I moved to Vancouver in March and I was telling one of my fans who was asking about music, who was telling me, what are you up to? I say, I'm moving to Vancouver. He's like, do you mind? Please let me buy your ticket to Vancouver. And I said, why? I'm like, well, I listen to your mixes and you're always generous with your time, with your music. It's the least I can do for all this. And you know what? If you ever need to travel, just let me know. I have so many points. I'm not using them anyway. And a move that was going to cost me a lot of money I just had to pay for, just like maybe just less than $100 just for my bicycles because the special carry, special baggage. And that's it. And I realized, oh, so this business of being tough and being independent and not needing anyone is actually the reason why I've been robbing myself because I have been giving, but I'm not receiving because I'm not asking. And that is, if there is one thing I learned is, I did plant my seed and I did put in the work. Not that it's a give and take, but people don't give just randomly. They give where they feel that they value, and I've provided the value. So now I don't even feel bad, when somebody says, hey, here's my flat. I'm going to be going for 3 months. Do you want to stay there? No rent. Because the one thing that I realized is the person will also tell me, but please, can you just water my plants? And it turns out it's a mutual beneficial agreement. But to this person anyway, to them, it's nothing because not only this person gave them so much music and so much whatever else that I provided. And also somebody's looking after the house. So nobody's breaking in, it's collecting the mail and, like watering the plants. So I realized that I was not alone and that nobody was against me and nobody hated me. It's just that it was my own pride and my own trauma that was creating problems. But now I know better. And it had to take me freezing to almost. And now actually, this is a story because I don't tell these stories but I'm sure my mother, none of my siblings will ever hear the message. Actually, one day I dropped on the road because I was in the process of freezing to death. But I realized the last thing to do is to stop. So I got off my bike, I dropped my bike, I left it there, and I started running in the snow. And then because, running in the snow is hard, and because the snow insulates the feet, when I started running, I started warming up again. And then that's how I regained my, but otherwise because I knew people had told me, when you feel like you want to sit down and crawl because it's so cold, that it means you're dying. So don't do that. When you do that, do whatever you need to do to stay warm. So yeah, so it was so all those adventures and all those, the trials and the tribulations were worth the lessons.
Yeah.
And the contacts, the people that I met. It was really worth it.
Yeah.
To give you a short answer.
No, it's amazing, JaBig. It's a beautiful story, and yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on I think we all enter codependent in a nice way, and we are who we are in relation to others, and I think it's really great to see that your community supported you in these hard times. And yeah, I mean, I remember like a couple of years ago, a long time ago, I can confirm I'm part of your followers, and you give so much to the world of house music and DJing, and trust me, your mixes fuels the many hours of running I used to do younger. I used to run marathons, and trust me, your mixes follow me in all these marathons and the backlash and all these amazing mixes. And I remember when that even happened, it feels like a long time ago, when you've lost all your belongings, and I found this GoFundMe page as well, and I remember it vividly actually. And it's so great to see that everybody supported you, and you've managed to finish your mission, so to speak, thanks to, well, your endurance, your stamina, your mental toughness, but also the support that actually fueled your spirits. It's really cool to watch, and I guess that enabled you to go until the end, just from a materialistic point of view, but also spiritually in your head, because we all know, well, when it comes to physical challenges, sometimes it's actually not the physical requirements, but we all know the mental plays a huge part in that journey. And the fact that you knew that people loved you, people supported you, that must have helped you fueling the engine, right? And have you managed to do it? And it's also great to see, yeah, you've made a great point around, we kind of carrying those beliefs, and sometimes it's caused by trauma or even or past experiences and history. And it's great that, again, yeah, like you said, it's never too late to realize sometimes that the way you think that may not actually serve you, in life or with people around you. And I think it's really humbling and nice of you to mention that. It speaks volume of, about who you are, I think. But tell me, on the freezing bit. So obviously, I mean, I've never been to Canada. Just so you know, I think the coldest country I visited was probably Norway. And
but before, let me interrupt you quickly.
Yeah.
It does get warm here. Like in summer here, we can get up to 45.
Yeah, it's like Russia. Like you guys have proper climate, like all season, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
But so in terms of because you said you didn't have any experience in ultra cycling, but one of the main factor we all knew is the weather. I mean, it's not like you cross the country in a beautiful summertime with like birds singing. So did you study ahead on how to cope with cold? And throughout your journey, maybe you can share with us maybe a couple of episodes, and like you've just mentioned, it sounds super hazardous and dangerous what you've been through. And so tell us a bit more about I guess, your educational journey, how you've managed to, I guess, prepare your trip and knew the tricks and what to do and what to avoid, and maybe tell us, one of the couple of dangerous moments you lived through that journey. I would love to hear that.
So, I mean, I don't know how long this podcast is gonna be, because it's gonna be quite a story. So, it actually started because I knew I wanted to ride across Canada, but I was doing some research about how to do it and this and that. And one day it actually happened that I was in London. So my trip started in January, but I think it was in November. Yeah, probably November because December was Montreal. Or perhaps, okay, let's say October, November, I had a gig in London. And I met up with some friends to go to a restaurant. And then in that, they also introduced me to their friends. And at that table, there was, like, I was going to say her girl, but she's not a girl, she's a woman that I really, find a liking too. But I had to go back, we had to part ways. And I told my friends, hey, how do I get back to where I come from? They're like, oh, actually, strange coincidence, this girl that I was into, that I fancied, she's actually going your way, so you can go together. She's going to show you where to go and she's going to put you in your train. Because, London and your metro system, whatever, tube, whatever you call it, it's not for the faint of heart. You need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to end up in Brighton or something, if you don't pay attention. So she said, okay, yeah, let's go. Then I'm, going to go in the train and then we're going in the same lane, but I'm going in the opposite direction. You just have to stay in this. I'm going to show you which train to get into and then you're going to keep going until you get to this other, now I remember because now I know London better. It was until Wembley Station. And then Wembley Station, I was going to switch and then stay on the same platform and then take another train. So we're walking and I'm like, okay. And then we walk by and then I see a store that sold bicycle clothing. And then me being sneaky and opportunistic and at the same time trying to kill two birds with one stone, I'm like, oh, you know what? Actually need to buy, because I told her briefly that I wanted to ride across Canada because she was also, she's still Canadian. She's Canadian, but she was living in the UK. So hey, let's just go to the shop. I just need to quickly check some clothes and see what it is. But it was really an excuse to buy time to spend more time with her. She's like, and I told her, you don't mind, are you in a rush? She's like, no, I have the time I have all the time. So I went in the store and obviously I wasn't really interested in being in the store because I was like, this is the UK. What in the world are they going to know about riding in winter? Because London winter has nothing to do with Canadian winter. I've ridden in winter. I've ridden winters in the UK and London. It's really nothing. It's what we call autumn here in Canada. So I went in there and sure enough, I told, a gentleman that worked there, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to cycle across Canada in winter, but you need to understand, I'm not talking about UK weather. So you need to tell me whether your clothes are made for UK weather. For Canadian winter or not. This gentleman said, don't worry. And he explained to me how to layer up. He's the one who actually taught me how to layer up, how you wear a best layer. And then you wear like a mid layer, and then outside you put like a breathable shell because in cycling. And then I need to buy another jacket that I put in my bag so that when I stop, I put it on. I should never wear it when I'm cycling because if I start sweating, then it's actually in winter you actually freeze from the sweat that freezes. So you have to find a balance where you are riding but you're not freezing. And we're talking, and then I told him, listen. That's because it didn't look like much. It looked like very thin clothes. I'm like, okay, let me just rephrase again. I'm not talking about UK weather. I'm talking about Canadian weather where we have minus 30, minus 40 and snow and this and that. And he told me, excuse me, sir, I'm actually from, I forget which country, but it was of Northern Europe. I don't know if it was a Scandinavian country or one of the others because I know one of the countries not part of Scandinavia, but it was Northern Europe. It was he was either Swedish, Norway, from Norway, or Denmark, or which other one? There's another one, but I forget. Anyway, so it was one of those countries, and told me, I know winter, and I'm telling you, it's gonna work. Then I was like, oh, okay. So then I was with this friend, and I told the person, do you mind if can I buy these clothes and have them sent to Canada? So actually, you can go online. We have a website. You can just go online and buy them. But in the meantime, I was talking with my friend my new friend, and we're talking and I was chit chatting. And then by the time I spent like maybe a good hour there, and then, we end up going for tea and spending so much time together. So for me, it was, just an excuse to go on an impromptu, date. But then I went back to Canada and I decided to buy clothes. And I realized in Canada, they didn't have that brand. And also different brands make different clothes and different material. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to follow the example of that man, what he told me. Fortunately for me, because, I was in that time the date. We were pretending that I was a model. So when I was trying the clothes, I was doing like silly moves. So I was actually able to go to the pictures and I remember the items that the salesperson had advised. So I went online and I bought them and I went on a maiden ride in Montreal. Oh my gosh, it was like minus 20, but I think I overdressed and this man was right. I started sweating and then I came back home and I was freezing because the sweat didn't, I was like, ah yeah, now I'm ready. So then I learned and then I went to that company and I learned how to dress properly and then I went. But still on the road, I got to learn some tricks. Like for instance, there's a whole difference when the wind is at your back. Because when the wind is at my back, when I have tailwind and the wind is pushing me, then I get to be warmer so I can actually even ride in a normal jersey because I'm traveling so fast that I'm releasing so much heat that even at minus 10, I can be in a simple jersey. But when the wind turns and I'm riding slowly and the wind is pushing me, then, oh wow, then I have to really layer up and put on the clothes and this and that. So that's how I got learning. And then I also discovered that rain is a whole different animal. And rain is actually the worst, not the cold, it's rain. Because rain, no matter what you do, that water will get through it. So that's why in a way I would rather cycle in Montreal's winter, ride a bicycle in Montreal's winter, despite how cold it is, than London. Because London, that rain will get to you, you know what I mean? And it's the same thing here in Vancouver. It rains a lot. So I'm, like learning to dress for rain is a whole different animal. So yes, so the rest of it was just, I got to learn by experience and, I got to buy clothes accordingly. And of course, different winters, like, for instance, in some parts of Canada, it was like a very humid winter. So I had to change different clothes than a very dry winter. So I really think that maybe 1/3 of my budget went into clothing because, and sometimes I would have to stop somewhere and then ship it back home. And then from that same company, buy new clothes and send them to an address somewhere else. So it was a whole exercise in dressing, and I got to learn as I went, and also got to learn to eat properly. I realized that you can't eat too much, and you can't eat too much proteins or fats because they take forever to break down. So now your body is busy cycling, pedaling, working out, but also busy digesting, and that's not good. So I learned to also, because I think the hardest thing of it, the most complicated thing was to force my body to go to bed before midnight. Because all my life as a DJ, I went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I was riding across the country. I had to wake up early to ride. That's the one thing I never managed to do. It was always a battle to wake up and to go to bed. Always.
Have you thought about taking melatonin supplement during that trip or?
Not really, because it makes you sleep, but it's not proper sleep. It's not sleep that makes you, rest. And for me, I wanted to sleep properly. So what I would do, it would be simple. I would just sleep. And then when I woke up, I would ride. And when I got to my destination, I would take a little nap before. And then, but it was really tough. It was really, really, sleep is the one thing that I was never able to sort of like conquer.
Wow. Yeah, because you used to live as a DJ. Night is your shift, and so how you managed at the end, and I'm curious to hear more about the diet part because like you, I'm really into sport and it's such a science, it's so complicated. So you've managed to kind of figure out, thanks to your magic date and the amazing salesman in London, the clothing you needed to conquer Canada. So that's a given. That's amazing. You knew more about and learned about, obviously the weather, the wind and snow, humidity. Sleep was kind of it was not that great, and maybe you can tell me more. I'm curious to hear how you managed to find and be able to sleep before midnight despite being, having a DNA of a DJ and food. I want to know more about your diet and the importance of it, because you've mentioned briefly protein and how it breaks down into your body. So tell me more about it.
So I wasn't really in control of my diet because most of the time I would stay with people, or if I didn't stay with people, it means I was in the middle of nowhere. So I would be in a motel, and motels here in Canada are exactly the way they portray them in the films, in American films. You don't go there for the gourmet experience. You eat what you are served and then you shut up. And most people who go to these motels are, like lorry drivers, like long haul drivers. So they lack really like greasy food and, but you know what? I learned to embrace it. Actually, it's actually pretty ironic that I gained 10 kilos in 15 months because I learned to stuff myself. I learned to eat like a pig because because some rides there would be nothing. I mean, it's very hard to explain to somebody who lives, like, for instance, in Europe, that I could ride the whole day with nothing, not even street sign, because it was pointless. One of those places where they tell you, if you haven't fueled up, turn around, because there's nothing else. And I would get to, you see, like a motel here and there, but you'll get to a city maybe a week later. I mean, not even a city, a town. So I really had to learn how to pick myself. Like, for instance, I'm not supposed to eat proteins and, and fats, but that's for a ride that lasts maybe 3 hours because you want to just stand for it. But I knew I had a whole day ahead of me, so I would have to stuff myself, and I would ride on one meal, on breakfast only, but one heavy breakfast. And then my next meal would be in the evening, dinner. And surprisingly enough, because I would be so exhausted, I wouldn't eat much at dinner. I would probably eat like, a salad or something so light because my stomach was too tired to eat and I really wanted to shower and go to bed. And yet, with that, I managed to gain weight. And it's not even like fat, it was muscle because, I could see my body, even my arms, my legs, my thighs, everything was just gaining so much. Okay, I do admit I've got, again, a little bit of a belly too. But I think that's from the chocolate because, even in the middle of nowhere there's chocolate. You just have to check the expiry date. And so, but in situations where I could control my diet, I would stop and have the biggest meal at lunch. That was not necessarily the wisest idea, but it was more practical for me because also eating in the morning, I have to fight with myself to eat in the morning because my stomach is still asleep. So when I knew that I was going to stop somewhere at noon for lunch, then I would have like light breakfast or even like a banana and ride. And then at noon, that's when my appetite would be open and then I'd take everything. But then the problem is that I would still have half of the ride to do. And usually that's when, oh my gosh, I would fall asleep on my bike and the feeling of falling off my bike is what would wake me up because then my stomach was, trying to digest and ride at the same time. So it's demanding for, and then of course I was on little sleep because I would probably get into bed at 11, but I would probably fall asleep at maybe 1 or 2 a.m. from fighting with sleep. And then I would have to wake up at 6 to get riding. So I was like sleep deprived, like full, full and then tired from the ride. So my body naturally wanted to fight and just take a rest and sleep.
Oh, sounds like fun, JaBig. Sounds like big fun. It's remarkable, really.
Right now it doesn't sound like fun because right now we are not. But I was out there admiring admiring the beauty that is Canada, and also feeling the sense of freedom of I'm out here. It was like ecstasy.
Amazing.
Ecstasy.
So what's your favorite spot? Despite, it's a challenge when I hear all that. I can imagine, the drive you had to have and the discipline to just continue. And we all know when you sleep deprived and you eat at random hours and on top of that, you have to ride like mad and in crazy weather. That's a challenge, but tell me about the scenery. You must have seen like one of the most wonderful spots of Canada, and what was like to just see Canada, coast to coast, and any of favorite spots or interesting people you've met along the way,
So most of Canada, unfortunately, I saw it as white because I rode most of it in winter, and winter is just winter. But but there are some places that really stole my heart. And few of them were, Nova Scotia, and another province called Newfoundland, and an island called Prince Edward Island, and then Quebec, Ontario, and then the prairies. Like the prairies, like the prairies. They were like, yeah, whatever. And then BC, where I live right now, was amazing. And it's the one part where I stayed the most, and I told myself, one day I'll move there. And then it actually took me 4 years to gather my courage and finally move here. And then, but for me, the province that stole my heart was Yukon, which is up there. It's like up there in the middle of nowhere. It's wild. It's wilderness. There is vast. I mean, it's crazy. It's so, I would ride, and then I would see all day, and then suddenly I would see a car, and I'm like, why is this person looking at me? Funny. And then I realized it's because I've been by myself for so long that I was riding in the middle of the road, because I was by myself. And then I also had some encounters with wildlife. I got charged by bison.
Wow.
Because there was like a big flock of bison. They were like little ones, babies, and I think they didn't like this guy coming this hill. So 2 male go together and they sort of like charged me. They were scaring me because if they wanted to charge me, they would have killed me because bisons can run at 45 kilometers an hour, and the most I could do with my luggage is probably 30. So if they wanted to kill me, they would have gotten to me. One time a big lorry drove by me and then threw rocks, not on purpose obviously, but threw rocks at me, and I took one in the side, in the body, and then I fell in a ditch, and the person never saw me because it was an unpaved road, so it was a lot of dust. He probably never saw me, and I just sat there for like 10 minutes trying to figure out if something was broken. But the most amazing part is the many people I met. I met so many. It's cliche to say, but that reputation, that Canadian, nice Canadian reputation that this country has proved to be true. I was hosted by people of all, I was hosted by people from indigenous communities. I was invited to, ceremonies that are usually not reserved for, to outsiders. People hosted me. I carried week-old baby. Like people who have just a baby would host me, and I was like, "Why would you host me?" They're like, "Well, life goes on, and you still need somewhere to play, to stay." And I was like, "Fair enough." So I held babies, because I speak French, and most people in Canada, even though it's a bilingual country, but in most parts, except for some places, it's very rare to find bilingual people. So with some people, they would practice their French and would share experiences. And, I was there when families were fighting because I would show up, let's say, for instance, sometimes I would show up on Monday. Monday, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. Monday is a tough day. And weekends, people will go out of their way to accommodate you. But Monday is like, nobody has time to act. So I would get into some family fights, or, it was awkward moment, or sometimes I would get dragged in, like, the famous, hey, JaBig, what do you think? And I'll be like, you know what? And then that's where, growing up with these diplomat kids helped, because you learn diplomacy. So you learn how to give an answer without even taking any part, or just saying, or playing dumb. I'm like, actually, I would pick the third option, and then give a third, because I didn't want to, I got so many experiences. And then when I went back to Montreal, some of the people I met, they would come to visit. I've made friends with them. And to the extent that when I rode across Canada the second time, I never had to worry about accommodation, because even in the middle of a pandemic, people still said, no, just come over. We're just going to put you in a separate room, isolate you. You can just do your thing. And, I made so many friends. I've had some awkward moments, but that's more of, I got saved by the fact that I put it on cultural differences, because sometimes it's true. There are times where people ask for my opinion, and I get my opinion, and it was not the popular opinion, so it got a little bit weird, or there are times where, I called out some people for their behavior in front of the spouse, and I was like, maybe I should just shut my mouth, but it's just that I don't know how to, and surprisingly, most people who hosted me, I would say the ones I don't stay in touch with is because some of them I didn't know well. I never got to get their contact details, but most people so far, they would have me again, but it was But I really got to meet so many people, and I met so many smart people, because most people who choose not to live in big cities and live in small towns, it means that there's something out of the big city. I mean, not all of them, because most of the people who are met in small cities, they were not from there. They had done the usual, went and worked in the big city and then got fed up and went to be as far as they could from big cities. And such people tend to have good life lessons and good, because they really taught me that you can really living a simple life and a full life is actually a choice. I mean, when I came back to Montreal and I heard of people like who live, for instance, in like cities like London or New York City and this and that, and they just rent and mortgage and traffic and everything is overwhelming them. That's a choice, because even in the UK, you can go into small cities, you can go and work in you don't have to work at a job that's killing you. You can just go pick a small job that makes you, because, I learned that from these people that the quality of life is more important than running after the rat race, because these people, oh my goodness, they really get to enjoy when they come from work. They really get to relax and enjoy, and, they don't have to deal with traffic, because they usually work, or they're self-employed, and because life is not that expensive, so they don't have to work that hard, because they also own their properties because it's so cheap there. So I really got to learn a lot about living the simple life and rich life, because I realized to go to bed without stress, for me, that's the ultimate luxury. Forget what anybody says. People like to say, yeah, you can be, yeah, but you're miserable, but you're in a mansion. I'm like, well, you can be happy. You can be happy without living in a shack.
Yeah, totally. Now, a lot of truth in what you're saying, and this trip, I mean, you have so many great stories and the insights that you shared, and I guess from your point of view, the lessons learned, whether it's things you've learned about yourself, like you said earlier, things you've learned about others, the new type of people you've met along the way, new ways of living, and other ways of living, probably from things that you have probably seen in the past from the big cities. It's a spectrum. There's so much to beautiful things, whether it's the physical challenge, the beautiful sceneries, the people, the community that supported you. Would you say, I mean, we don't know what's life like, and like you said, you have many other projects, upcoming and close to what you've done in ultra cycling and other things like that. But would you say that this trip has been one of the most enriching experience that you have lived so by far? Would you say that?
It is the most, I think it was most extraordinary experience of my life, because like, I'm from Rwanda and I survived the genocide and I survived, that is just a trauma. So, I can't compare to that. And also, I haven't had an easy life, because I was always bouncing from country to country. But usually when I was doing most life experiences I went through was with my family, meaning, my parents and my siblings. So I was never really alone. But when I rode across Canada, it was the first time I did something crazy, daring, and it was just, I had to rely on myself. I know that, obviously, I was a DJ and I had a house and this and that, so I had responsibility. But something adventurous like that, something that required for me to step out of my physical comfort zone, it was the first time. And I really got to learn a lot about myself. I mean, like one of the things I realized that, oh my goodness, it is true. I complain a lot. Because even I would be riding and I would be like, oh, shut up, stop complaining. I would annoy myself. I'm like, just stop complaining. But then I realized that I complain a lot, but I also do stuff. I complain. It's just my way of processing. It's not complaining. It's just like, I have to do this. And then I learned to shift my language and say, why is this? And I said, I get to do this. Oh, why is this hill coming at me? Why is this wind bothering me? And I say, oh, I get to be bothered by this wind instead of being stuck in a desk, in a job that I hate. And then that shift of perception would make the wind or the bad weather less of a curse and actually part of the blessing, and it's crazy how that attitude shift, then ironically it affects my performance, because then I'm chirpier, so I'm happier, and then I pedal faster, and I'm more, I'm more like resilient to these discomforts. So it was easily, and also I really got to see what I'm made of. You know what I mean? I know that I am usually treated, people call me very fragile. I'm treated with a lot of delicacy, like when I, like not delicatesse, pardon, like I don't know how to call that in English. And people tend to go easy. And then I realized, you know what, I'm actually stronger, because we all have our traumas and our own insecurities. But when I was growing up, yes, I used to make the football team and the basketball team, but it wasn't because I was athletic. It was because I was popular and my friends would pick me. But at the end of the day, I was always the slowest runner. I didn't even know how to kick a ball properly, and I didn't know how to throw. I couldn't even I was so weak. I couldn't even throw the ball and hit the ring, never mind. So whenever I even score a point in basketball, for me it was like, oh my goodness, forget the point. Actually, the ball reached there. And, I have a very fragile health. I'm very fragile. But surprisingly, when I rode across Canada, I think I got sick once, and it was food poisoning, and it was weird. Like, I became stronger. My body, somebody said it's because you're too busy. Your body's too busy to have the time to fall ill. But also it's because, I guess, because I'm always exercise. My body's always flashing out toxins and all the nastiness, that I never really got to get sick. But I realized that I'm not weaker, or nobody's stronger than me. I'm just strong in my way. Just because I cannot lift a lot of weight doesn't mean that I'm not strong. I'm just more strong my way. My strength is getting on a bike and riding in ridiculous conditions, for 15 months. You know what I mean? And so that was very good for my own self-esteem. So this trip did a lot. And then, in a very twisted, weird, impossible, hard to understand, unexpected way, taking off 15 months to go cycle across Canada actually boosted my DJ career. Because now I wasn't just some DJ. I was like, oh, that's some DJ that rode across Canada in winter on a bicycle with one gear. So I found that even the big names and the big DJs and the big whatever started treating me with a little bit more. Like, now you send an email and they're like, hey, how are you? Listen, I was showing your trip. My son, my children and I, we followed your trip, across the country, and, you inspired my children. I want to thank you. What is it that you want? And I'm like, oh my goodness, this person replied to me, and I would, for instance, when I DJed in London and I was looking for a venue, one of the persons said, yeah, I know him. Isn't that the guy who rode across Canada in winter? And I'm like, oh my goodness. And it opened so many doors. And I found that even, and like I said, because now my fan base and I, we had a tighter connections. Now even more people came to my parties, except one person here that I'm talking to with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, except,
we will gather again and DJ together for sure.
I would send them invitations and they will never show up, but hey, let's just carry on. You know what I mean? And people started coming up, and it was different. It was like a whole new, because I don't know, but also I guess because people, whenever I was having bad days, I would just write, complain on social media. So people saw, oh, he's actually human. He's not, even though he's very reserved and this and that, but he has feelings like everybody else. And people wanted to hear about the stories real hand. So, it's really amazing how it boosted the kind of gigs I got. And I was actually, because of the self-confidence, I could actually pursue the bookings that I felt inadequate or not, worthy of getting. But now, this newfound bravado, so to say, I could just say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. This is my fee. And then I was like, okay, they're probably gonna send me to hell. And meantime, people would say, okay, but we have one question. Yes. How would you like your payment? Because we'd like to give you a deposit. I'm like, oh my gosh, a deposit? What is this? And so that trip changed my life. And I mean, even right now, I've done some pretty epic rides, by bicycle, and I've done things, but it doesn't matter where I go. Like it's always this big ride that everyone speaks about. You know what I mean? It's crazy how even my own family members and my own siblings, sometimes I'll tell a story and they're like, oh, tell us this story. And I'm like, but I've told you everything. But like, no, we didn't know this story. Like sometimes I'll tell you, oh, I stopped in this city and something, and I spent there like 1 week because I just wanted to sleep. They're like, you didn't tell us that. What happened? I'm like, well, because I just want to sleep. I'm like, what do you mean you want to sleep? I'm like, well, I rented a place for 1 week and I just want to sleep all week because eventually I realized that I need to do something about my sleep because the more I rode I never got used to sleep. So I said, every now and then I'm going to take breaks and just sleep. And I would take a week sleeping because I realized that lack of sleep was making me do stupid mistakes. Like, for instance, go through a traffic light because I was zoned out. I wasn't thinking straight because I wasn't, I was exhausted. So then, yeah, so it really changed my life and it's the biggest thing I've ever done. And to be honest, even if it's just one thing, epic things I do in my life, or if there's one thing that, that's the most notable, I don't mind because it was, man, I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was epic and I really enjoyed. I mean, and I also really learned to enjoy my own company. It was so good to get to know myself.
Yeah, I can imagine, JaBig. No, but yeah, like you said, it's an incredible journey, and it's really really cool to see that and you've done it. It was an intrinsic motivation, but it's always good to see that down the line, the workout's still there, and people recognize it. And I think it's just fair. I've always been an advocate of, physical challenges, adventures, because we always learn so much more about, well, ourselves, but also others. And we have I think we can also earn and develop, I think, a better way of seeing life. And there's so much more, so much to learn in these journeys, in these adventures. I can relate, but on different levels. I'm not a cyclist. I will admit, I will confess, but I've done a lot of travels and crazy physical challenges, and not nothing that can compare what you have done, and you've done something truly amazing. But yeah, like you said, that you learn so much from yourself, from others. You gain new perspectives, for life, and it's really, really cool. So I know you've mentioned, obviously, you're a big DJ, and you've got big plans. So what's next for you?
So right now we're in a pandemic, so making plans is a bit of a like almost twisted joke because we don't know where things are going. But I realize now that I don't want to DJ anymore because for the sake of DJing. Now I want to have my own parties in specific places around the world and my own events. And so one of the things I'm probably going to do is at one stage, I'm going to have to move to Europe just because even on a bicycle ride, I realized that it was crazy to be in such a short time, you can be in a whole new market. And whereas in Canada, you have like maybe three major cities, and some of them you have to fly like 6 hours to get to them. And so eventually my long term go and to combine that with my cycling because Europe, for cycling is the best. But for now, I'm here in British Columbia, in Vancouver. I'm also trying to figure out a way to also make this cycling thing like to sort of like make it a little bit more professional. Because at the end of the day, I'm telling stories of my rides, I'm inviting people for rides and, I'm sort of promoting companies, and I realized, okay, I'm making things happen, maybe I should also make things happen for myself, because bills have to be paid. And keeping with that same spirit, I've started asking people for, hey, I need this, I need that, or I would like this to happen. And people are responding well. So right now I want to get myself where I want to be able to combine cycling, charity work, and my music, and actually just travel the world that way. So, I don't want to share much, because part of being on social media and sharing it's, part of it's the whole suspense, and then of course, if things backfire, there's no explaining to do, you know what I mean? But, it's part of the world. Is, if there's something I realize is, right now I'm in a very beautiful place, but I realize that I'm comfortable staying in one certain space, but also I think right now, the state of what's going to happen is that those who never traveled are never going to travel. And those who traveled are going to travel even more. Once I'm able to get a stamp on my passport, I am so out of here. I don't even know. I think I'm just going to go. The US border is I think the US border right now is probably like 20 kilometers away from me. So I'm probably going to ride to the US just for this, just to feel, oh, I'm abroad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I really feel that my childhood dream was to travel around the world playing music. And actually realized that I've learned something from this pandemic, is that actually it's the time of, when I grow up. I'm 41. When I grow up, it's actually,
look young. Well done, you.
has happened. When I grow old, I'm actually old now. So I need to realize my dreams, and I need to pursue them, because I realize that also most of the time we do things so that you can help us realize our dream. But why not just go for your dreams and then figure out as you go along? That's my, been my sort of like my loose policy, but now it's my definite policy.
That's good.
So
you're very humble, JaBig, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's for your own benefit. I think you're very humble, because you've traveled a lot, thanks to your amazing DJ career that you had until now, and you would still continue. And also I love the fact that you just throw it out there very casually. I will just ride to the US quickly, and I think for the listeners that don't know you, just FYI, before you've achieved this amazing coast to coast ultra cycling in Canada, you've piled up some serious ride records. I think you shared with me is it Strava, the application?
Yeah.
And well, that's quite ridiculous. So maybe share quite a few numbers, just for your own benefit, because I think you're being too humble here.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, so what? I ride a bike. That's a funny thing. Compared to somebody who doesn't ride a bike, it's not a big deal. But compared to people who because I guess that's my nature, where nothing is ever good enough. Because instead of comparing myself to 99% of the population, actually 99.9999% of the population who cannot ride the same way I do, I compare myself to the 0.0000001% of the people who actually do things that I find insane. Yes, I do crazy rides, and yes, I'm fortunate. I'm good at what I do, and I'm actually laugh, because sometimes people in Vancouver, they say, "Hey, if you want to meet somewhere, it's right here." But they're like, "Yeah, but it's a little bit far." And I'm like, "Far? What do you mean?" "Well, it's probably like 10 kilometers." I'm like, "Are you aware that I did cycle across a country, right? That's how we know each other. It's not your hour ride that's going to kill me. If anything, it's going to be enjoyable because I get to ride." You know what I mean? So yes, I do acknowledge that, sometimes I underplay. And maybe it's false humility, or it's just genuine. It's the fact that I'm always looking for what's next. I don't like to dwell in the past. So what if because I'm the kind of person yeah, so what? You cycle across Canada. Who cares? That's passé. What are you doing today?
I love it. You have the mindset of a champion, because I love it. And it's, that's why it will drive you, I think, forward in life to, like you said, you're very grateful of what you have accomplished, but then it's what's next, and you have this sort of like growth mindset, and you're very self-critical. So I'm very excited for what's coming next, and to hear about your future, whether it's a cycling challenge or God knows, we'll see. But hey, JaBig, it's been really cool, really chatting with you. You're a cool guy, and I want to ask one question, and I always ask people this question. What are the skills you would say, or personality, character, or whatever the name, that you think helped you so far in life?
Well, I would say I'm stubborn. That helps. But I'm also stupid, meaning sometimes I don't realize the danger until the danger has happened. A quick example. If somebody I love, or if anybody asks me that they want to do the same ride in winter across Canada, the way I did it, I would say, you know what? I don't want to sound like somebody who's a hater, but I cannot encourage that because I cannot endorse that because that's stupid. So if I knew what I knew before I rode that ride, I would have never done it. So yeah, so stupidity, ignorance is bliss or whatever. And then the third one is, I think what saved me and what served me well is my ability to be good with people. Because it turns out that no wonder if you look at what's going on in the world, the ones who get far are the ones, politicians, is the ability to work with people. And also it's, life is living on this earth is a social activity. You don't live in a vacuum. Even the people people I said earlier who live in the middle of nowhere, they still have to be the friends with the neighbor, even though they live in such open spaces that the neighbor can be 50 kilometers. But they still need to be social with them because when they have an emergency, 999 or 911 in North America, nobody's coming for you. So you have to rely on your neighbors to come assist you if something happens. And if you're a jerk, you will die, So I found that people's skills is so basically, so to repeat myself, the fact that I'm stubborn, I'm stupid, and I'm, charming are the things that save me.
Nice. Well, I think it's a good way, I think, to wrap up that discussion. I'll make sure I give to all our listeners links to your amazing DJ sets, and you have the JaBig journey website, capturing this fantastic journey, and I'm sure we'll chat soon again, JaBig. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the My Narrative podcast. If you enjoy the content, we welcome your support by contributing on Patreon. Find out more at mynarrative.co.uk. Bye.